Welcome to the City of Milpitas Planning Commission on August 30th at 6 o'clock. Anyone in the chamber who wishes to make a comment? Not agendized, please fill out the speaker card located at the back of the chamber and hand it to the receiving secretary. For those online, instructions to make comments are in the meeting agenda. Calling the meeting to order. Commissioner Medina Ashby, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. United States of America, one nation. Thank you. Roll call. Recording Secretary Liz Medina.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll begin taking attendance, starting with Commissioner Albana.
Present.
Commissioner Wasti.
Present.
Chair Chuan is absent. Vice Chair Ciardella.
Present.
Commissioner Galong is absent. Commissioner Medina Ashby.
Present.
And Commissioner Mosen is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, conflict of interest declaration. City Attorney Christopher Breach.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I understand it's a little bit different for this meeting because it's a special and informational meeting, but it's still required by our code. So I asked the Vice Chair and every other member of the commission whether he or she has any financial or personal conflict of interest related to any of the items on tonight's agenda.
Commissioner Albana.
None.
Commissioner Wasti.
None.
Vice Chair Ciardella.
None.
And Commissioner Medina Ashby.
None.
Thank you.
Thank you. I further ask the Vice Chair and every other member of the commission to please disclose any campaign contributions of $100 or more received within the last 12 months from any of the parties entering into contracts with the city on tonight's agenda, or contributions received from any development project applicant or development projects on tonight's agenda.
Commissioner Albana.
None.
Commissioner Awasti.
None.
Vice Chair Ciardella.
None.
Commissioner Medina Ashby.
None.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that there are no reported conflicts of interest. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, the next item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda for August 30th, 2023?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for August 23. Approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 And sorry, Vice Chair, can you also ask for if there are any nays or abstentions?
Is there any nays or abstentions? Seeing none.
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 Next is announcements. Do any of the planning commissioners have any announcements?
Vice Chair, I wanted to ask if for our next meeting, we don't have our next planning commission meeting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing none. Interim planning director, any announcements?
Good evening, commissioners. The only announcement I had was about the cancellation of the September 13th meeting. So thank you for announcing that. That's all.
Thank you. Next is a public forum. Those interested are invited to address the Planning Commission on any subject not on tonight's agenda, orally or via Zoom webinar instructions above. Speakers may provide their name and the city of residence for the recording secretary's record, and comments may be limited to 3 minutes or less. As any item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the Planning Commission. No action can be taken. The Planning Commission may instruct the staff to place the item on a future meeting agenda. Recording secretary, is there anybody on Zoom?
Vice Chair, there are no hands up in the Zoom queue, and we have no community members in the chamber. Thank you.
Okay, next is our project presentation, item number 8-1, Planning Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. And we are here to present on provide a progress report and to host a study session on phase 1 of the comprehensive zoning ordinance update. We have our project manager, Holly Pearson, here, and I believe our consultants as well to give the presentation. You may recognize Holly from previous meetings where she's provided or where she's come to the commission with several ad hoc zoning ordinance amendments. But she's here now managing the project and helping facilitate the comprehensive update of the zoning ordinance. So now I'll pass it off to Holly Pearson. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Good evening, commissioners, and thank you so much for being here tonight for a special meeting on this very important topic. Again, I'm Holly Pearson. I'm the city's project manager for the comprehensive zoning update. You've seen me previously as a consultant to the city, and I'm now on board as a part-time city employee. So very glad to be here. I know the planning commissioners are very familiar with the zoning ordinance, or also known as the zoning code. But for any members of the audience who are not familiar, it's Title 11, Chapter 10 of the Milpitas Municipal Code. And the zoning code is a comprehensive set of regulations that govern land use and urban development in Milpitas. So these regulations control everything from a small addition to a single family home up to the construction of a large new multifamily residential building or an industrial building or any type of new major development. So tonight's presentation and discussion are part of the first round of work on the zoning update. The project began in February of this year, and the entire comprehensive zoning update is expected to take about 2.5 years to complete. This will include a full comprehensive rewrite and restructuring of the zoning ordinance that will address many, many aspects of the code and will improve many aspects of the code. This first phase that we're discussing tonight involves the most time-sensitive piece of the zoning update, which is those sections that are necessary to implement the new land use policies in the general plan that was updated in 2021, as well as implementation of the land use policies in the metro specific plan, which was, as you know, was adopted just a few months ago, about 6 months ago in February of this year. So with that, I think I'm ready to turn over the floor to our consultant, Lisa Wise Consulting, or LWC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you, Director Lee. Vice Chair, Commissioners, it's really a pleasure to be before you tonight at our first study session to talk about the zoning ordinance update. Next slide, please. So I'm Jen Merlo. I am a director with LWC. I am the project manager for the consultant team on this effort. With me tonight, I have Monica Zidlik and Caroline Chen, and Monica and I will be co-presenting tonight. Next slide. So I'll run through an overview. Holly gave a great introduction. I'll give a little bit more information on the project overview and talk about the first larger work product we've put out for this project, which is the background review and recommendations report. Then I'll pass it over to Monica to talk about the new zoning districts that have been drafted, and I'll wrap up speaking to the zoning map update and next steps. Next slide. So first, with the project overview, next slide, please. What we're trying to accomplish, as Holly mentioned, the zoning ordinance update, doing a comprehensive update like this is very common after an update to your general plan. So we're following suit to ensure, as required by state law, the zoning ordinance is consistent with and implements your general plan. But also, we want to ensure that we accomplish an appropriate modernization of your zoning ordinance. We want to make sure it's up to date, that it's user-friendly, and that it reflects best practices. We don't do these projects, well, we do these projects often, but cities don't do these projects often. So we want to make sure that we take the opportunity to tackle a lot of the potential challenges or constraints with your current ordinance. And then, of course, we want to promote compact, mixed use, and transit-oriented development types where appropriate. Next slide. So, as it was mentioned, this is about a 2.5-year overall process. We started off looking at the background, kind of conducting some background review and research, and that's culminated in this background review and recommendations report. Now we're very focused in this phase 1 effort of the project, which is, as was mentioned, the critical kind of time-sensitive piece of preparing new zones. They don't exist in your code today and are necessary to implement new designations from your general plan and from the metro specific plan. And then to do that, we have to update the zoning map in a corresponding fashion to make sure the new districts that are being drafted are placed appropriately on the zoning map. So that's the package, that's phase 1. That is what we're focused on discussing tonight. Phase 2, the comprehensive code rewrite, it will continue on for about another year or so following this first phase, to make sure we can tackle all the content within the existing ordinance and get a refresh, restructure, and update. We have community outreach and public meetings throughout this process. Right now, we're at the first Planning Commission study session, but we have more study sessions and other opportunities for public input. Next slide. Some of the outreach we've done so far and meetings we've had so far include meetings with the Technical Advisory Committee. That's an in-house internal group that includes representatives from fire, building, parks, economic development, engineering, to make sure technical aspects of the code we're really coordinated on. We've also had interviews with stakeholders, firsthand users of the code, to get their perspective on what works well, what doesn't work well. We've held 2 meetings with the Zoning Advisory Group. That is a group that's comprised of city commissioners, so that we can have a diverse group and get feedback on key topics, issues, and at critical milestones on the project. And then we had our first community workshop last week, and that was focused on the background review and recommendations report, as well as a zoning advisory group we had last week. So these meetings, the public meetings, and all the information on these are available on the project's website. That's milpitaszoningupdate.org. So all the information from videos of these meetings, summaries of these meetings, and upcoming meetings and materials are all available on that website. There's also an opportunity to sign up for email updates if you're interested, or even provide comments through the website. Next slide, please. So first, I'll talk about this at a high level, this background and recommendations report, because that is not the focus of what we're going to talk about tonight, but we want to make sure we touch on it at a high level. Next slide. This report is something we like to prepare at the outset of these types of projects because it helps us get a kind of a lay of the land, a good foundation to move forward on. Here we look at the effectiveness of your existing ordinance and look at also inconsistencies between the policy documents the city has so we can identify recommendations to address those key issues. And we acknowledge that in this report, these are preliminary recommendations. These will be refined. These will be expanded as we work through the project, but it helps us kind of get an understanding from the beginning, kind of what we're working toward. Next slide. And in this effort, we look at, of course, the general plan, the recently adopted housing element, the metro specific plan, but we also touch on the objective design standards that were adopted last year, the climate action plan, the economic development strategy, trail bike master plans. We look at all those to ensure that if there are any aspects that are policies relevant to zoning, that we can capture that. We've got a great opportunity in this effort. We want to capture any direction where it's appropriate. Next slide. And then there are 6 kind of categories of recommendations we have in this report. They include the recommendations on code organization. So how can we better improve the structure more logically and streamlined? Where we should make or are recommending to make modifications to the new zoning districts, adding new ones like we're talking about tonight, but also modifying existing ones or maybe eliminating others that aren't as effective or restructuring how they're trying to accomplish their purpose. Use regulations, here we're focused on how can we ensure that the code can accommodate the evolving nature of uses, that they change over time, uses that we haven't thought of today are going to emerge over the life of this ordinance, and how can we effectively ensure that those can be processed and considered by the city. Development and design standards include recommendations related to things like parking, landscaping, objective design standards that haven't been adopted yet. We have recommendations for sign standards. Those are largely related to legal parameters, and then recommendations for administration and procedures. So how can we streamline how the city reviews development applications? So next slide, please. And I think with that, I want to pass it over to Monica Zidlick to talk about the key topic tonight, which is the new zoning districts. So thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Jen. Hello, commissioners. I'm Monica Zidlick, Senior Associate at LWC. So as Jen mentioned, the first phase of our work ahead of the comprehensive update is to develop some new zones and to go ahead and adopt them earlier in the process. So the occasion for this work is a few things, really, primarily the fact that the general plan describes a new district called the BPRD, or Business Professional Research and Development, for which there is currently no implementing zone. And also the new metro area specific plan, which describes all new zones for the metro area that aren't yet codified. So our phase 1 work includes those zones and some other amendments needed in response to the recent housing element. So this slide shows the sections of the existing code where we've recommended amendments to complete this work, and also some new sections. So first, if we can look at section 7 here. So first, the BPRD is added to this existing section of the code that regulates all the city's industrial zones. And then new section 9, we added a new section for the metro zones where we had an unused number 9, which was helpful. And then given the changes to the section 7 use table and the new section 9, we had to update section 2 up at the top with new uses and their definitions, because we don't want to use any use table if we don't have it defined in the code. Then we added some content to section 53 to address parking in the metro area and for new uses. We added a section to implement a housing element policy while we're at it. Of course, implementation of the housing element is a priority all around. And then to facilitate development on parcels where these new zones create nonconformities, we added this subsection to address that. So that's the general overview of what we've done in this phase one. Now we have a few slides that just summarize the actual changes to the code. So let's move on to the next slide. So starting at the top here with definitions, I'll go through some of the more substantive changes we made to accommodate the new land uses. The code right now, it uses some broad catch-all categories for things like manufacturing. So we've split those up a bit. We created a use for advanced manufacturing and contractor shop and custom and artisan manufacturing, all of which we would expect to operate on different scales and to have different impacts. Similarly, we took the general retail use and we separated out a few uses that describe different small scale retail activities that we might want to regulate separately. So this included retail limited, convenience store, and small grocery. And of course, we still have grocery. We updated the definition of R&D to reflect the uses that we're really seeing, and then a few other cleanups. Let's go on to the next slide. And then we added some uses to describe different configurations of residential development that we might want to see. We added a few new commercial uses, notably catering establishments, commissary kitchen, and mobile fueling. We added some new public uses and several new industrial uses that help distinguish among activities with different size and access needs, and also perhaps different impacts on the neighborhood. Also, the Metro specific plan uses this term active uses in a lot of policies and maps, and so we defined that one. So now let's look at the zones themselves. If we can click to the next slide. So for the BPRD, our starting point was a general plan. So on the left here is a page from the GP that describes this new land use and really tells us what it is. So the GP envisions business parks, high intensity office uses, light manufacturing parks and light industrial, and the integration of R&D and small scale warehousing with these uses. So management, design, and manufacturing all on one site in a campus-like setting with some nice amenities too. So next slide. So what did we do? We added a purpose statement for this new use, and we added a column to the use table and a column to the standards table. So the GP shows this zone generally down in the southwest part of the city. And the content we added is, next slide, is the content we added is really very much in alignment with the general plan's direction, with an FAR of at least 0.5 and up to 2.5. Next slide. And then to fully implement the general plan's vision for this area, we added a set of design standards. So that is new. The standards address entrances, meaning orientation and frequency, and some basic design measures. Facade design and articulation, meaning some basic transparency and modulation requirements that are appropriate to the uses that we would see in this zone. With the ped and bike standards, we really have the campus-like environment in mind. Larger projects have some additional requirements for usable common open space for employees, on-site stormwater detention and lighting. A landscaping section presents standards for landscaping and required setbacks and building perimeters and parking areas, and also some specific standards about landscape materials themselves, meaning size and spacing and turf and ground cover. The parking and loading standards address parking location and the design of parking facilities, essentially to minimize the visibility of parking. And lighting standards ensure that the area feels safe. So that's it for that one zone. click to the next slide. Next up, we have a whole new section for the metro zones, for all of the metro zones. So organizationally, it's similar to the other sections. For example, section 7. And then in general, we remained true to the metro area plan as best we could. So we added a purpose for each of the 7 metro zones. So these are R3 metro, R4 metro, R5 metro, MXD 2 metro and 3 metro, and then BPRD R metro and BPRD metro. So we added a use table, all of these zones lined up at the top like this, followed by some standards that are specific to uses and activities in the metro area. And then next slide. And a table of development standards with the basics. So the basics are density, FAR, setbacks, height, etc. All of these standards came directly from the metro specific plan itself. And then design standards. Next slide, please. So for the metro area, design standards really come from a few places. So the new Milpitas residential and mixed use objective design standards, of course, apply to residential and mixed use development citywide and in this area. So we include a reference to that document. It applies. We also wanted to be sure that the development in the BPRD metro zones, there's 2 of them, right, would be subject to the same standards that we just reviewed for the regular BPRD zone. So we included a cross-reference to that. And then next slide. And then the design standards that are really specific to the metro areas only have a part in this section. We were careful not to step on the toes of the ODS document or to repeat any of those standards, but to get a little more specific where appropriate about building design and site design where we saw a need, to make sure that we see the quality of development that the specific plan envisions for this area. So I should mention a lot of these standards really derive directly from specific plan policies. So we introduced standards for a range of design elements to ensure that blocks remain compact and walkable. We've established appropriate street wall heights, which means that the point at which upper stories must be stepped back from the ground floor when facing a street. And other standards that prevent long and uninterrupted facades. Ground floor design to ensure that non-residential spaces have a usable depth and an ample floored ceiling height. Building materials that demonstrate the quality that's described in the specific plan. Unit design standards to enhance accessibility beyond ADA requirements. A range of parking and site design standards to accommodate the transit-oriented, mixed-use, active, and walkable environment that we're seeking in this area, the specific plan describes. And standards to ensure utility screening. Next slide. We included a few subsections that are similar to those of existing code sections. Next slide. So amendments to section 53 parking are really pretty simple. We just codified what's in the specific plan, the specific plan policy, that there's no minimum requirement for parking in the metro area. And then we specified that we included that the maximum requirements that are stated in the specific plan. We also added standards for bike parking and made sure that all the new uses that we included have a parking requirement. They didn't get skipped over. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation back to Jen to wrap this up and then talk about next.
Thanks, Monica. Next slide, please. Oh, no, here we are on the slide. I'll be quick with it, though. The next one, Liz, sorry about that. The housing element. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. So we did, as I believe Holly mentioned, slip in the housing element sites requirement This reflects the program 1 in your housing element, and it applies to certain identified housing sites that have been identified for lower income capacity and were either reused from a previous housing element or rezoned to accommodate lower income capacity. These parameters reflect state law codified in your housing element, so there aren't any surprises here. But you can check the box with the state that you have implemented one of your programs. So next slide, please. And as was mentioned, because we are looking at changing zoning on property within the city, we do want to ensure that we don't have any unintended consequences of creating lots that may not be considered buildable due to a change in relevant standards that could be applied. So we added a provision that ensures that legal non-conforming lots are considered buildable parcels. Next slide. So leading into that is the last piece of this, which is the zoning map update. Next slide. And our approach to this update is pretty straightforward in that we were charged with taking the general plan land use map, the Milpitas metro specific plan land use map, and ensuring that the zoning is consistent with those maps. And then doing any cleanup zoning that the city identified was necessary for a handful of parcels. Next slide. This is the citywide map identifying the parcels proposed for zoning changes. What you can see here is that there is a focus down in the southwest area. That is the southwest employment area in the darker blue. That's the BPRD zone that Monica just spoke to. I do have slides that zoom in on these on the next one, so I'll just talk generally here and then we'll look at a few. Next, over to the east of the BPRD area is the metro specific plan. That's where you see the Great Mall area in the big pink and purple. Then you see a couple of, sure, yeah, we can go to the next one, that's fine. So here, this is the next slide that shows the metro specific plan area. And in this case, we took one for one the land use map in the specific plan and were able to, we transferred that over to the zoning. So we have complete consistency there. This BPRD area is also reflective of what's identified in the general plan land use map. We also have a little inset here for a residential subdivision on Wanipero Drive. There, that's proposed to be rezoned to R2 for consistency with the general plan. There is a PUD that applies to this property, so we don't think that a rezone would be problematic, but city staff is looking into that to confirm. Next slide, please. Here we see a couple of the NCMU, neighborhood commercial mixed use areas. These areas are having the NCMU district standards and zone, that zone is being developed under a separate effort. That's the Housing Opportunity District's effort that these are being prepared for, but we're getting those plugged into the map. So you see the areas east of 680, the southern area along Landess, and then north along East Calaveras. Next slide. As you go up to the northwest area of the city along California Circle, this area was also identified as NCMU in the general plan, and also identified for maybe a specific plan effort, but considering some changes that have happened, a new application that's coming in, adjusting the zoning here to kind of reflect what's going on now. And you also have the third NCMU area here up at Dixon and North Milpitas Boulevard. Next slide. And here's a couple other residential areas proposed to be rezoned for consistency with the general plan low density residential designation. Similar to the other residential area, these areas have a PUD approved, so we don't believe the rezoning will be problematic, but we're looking into the PUDs with city staff to confirm. And next slide. And then here you see the citywide zoning map that includes these changes. So you can see these changes in context. And all these maps are on the website, milpitaszoningupdate.org. So you can pull them up and zoom in and out. But we do have, we do have the opportunity, city staff is offering office hours. So if there's a particular parcel you have a question about or want to discuss further, there are virtual and in-person office hours city staff is offering, and you can sign up for that. You could actually go to the next slide, please. You can sign up for that on the website, again, milpitaszoningupdate.org. Those office hours are being held through mid-October, so we've got some time to talk about, have these maps out on the street and talk about them. There are also meetings, upcoming meetings that we're going to continue to talk about this phase 1 material. That includes an Economic Development and Trade Commission study session on September 11th and a City Council study session on October 3rd. So we're holding these study sessions now because we want to be prepared to hopefully make any revisions that we hear during this public review process, during these study sessions, and bring that back for adoption hearing at the end of the year. So ideally having adoption hearings with the Planning Commission in December and then council in January of next year. So thank you so much. I think that concludes our presentation. We really appreciate the time and look forward to any questions and comments.
Are there any questions of the commission? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Next, there's no new items for new business. And next, as we move along to our legalese before adjourning the meeting, any person aggrieved by any final decision of any board, commission, or decision of the city council by filing a written notice appeal to the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date and said decision and paying for the required fees. The time limit shall be strictly enforced.
Excuse me, Chair. I think before we go to adjourning the meeting, I think we want to confirm if there are any members of the public who want to speak on the item, and also if the commissioners have any questions, and then we can answer those questions. Before going on to the new business and the adjournment.
Okay. Is there anybody out in the audience or on Zoom that has any questions? Liz?
As of right now, there are no hands up in the Zoom queue. However, we do have both Alex Andrade, our Economic Development Director, and the City Manager, Ned Thomas, online, should they want to contribute.
Okay. Does any of the commissioners have any other questions for Alex or anybody else? Seeing none, Alex, would you like to say something? Okay.
Hi there, this is Alex Andrade, Economic Development Director. I am on the road, but I did hear my name called. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to respond to anything related to the business park research and development zoning update.
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Planning Commission and staff.
Does the interim planning director have anything to add to this?
Just want to encourage you because this is part of this is to provide a progress report, but also a study session to receive any feedback from the commission. So if you have any questions or any comments or thoughts, now is a good time because we will return, after doing more public outreach for a recommendation to the city council, but we definitely want to consider any of your input or feedback, which can be incorporated into into the draft zoning amendments and also the zoning map. So yeah, now is a good time, but if not, that's fine too. But just want to make it clear that this also is a study session.
Okay, seeing none. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. May I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting from any of the commissioners?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And can I?
Chair, before we adjourn, we have a community member who's raised their hand in the Zoom queue. Would we mind taking comment from Mr. Ward Mace?
Oh, of course,
Okay,
yes.
wonderful, thank you.
I apologize. I am not a Zoom person. I am a Teams person, but thank you for the opportunity to speak. And just wanted to first off say thank you for that presentation. And by the way, I'm sorry, I should start with my name is Ward Mace, and I am a resident of San Francisco and work with a Goodman, which is a global property company. And we have been looking at some opportunities for development in the city of Milpitas. And want to say thank you to Alex and Daniel and Ned, as well as Michael Fasadi, Jay Lee, and Holly Pearson. We've had a couple of different meetings to talk about this proposed zoning update. And frankly, we have some concerns with it, just in terms of the elimination of some of the warehouse and industrial uses, in that a lot of the companies that we're targeting, which are advanced manufacturing companies, warehousing is an important component of their business. So would like to and concerned about the limitation on warehousing as it restricts it to an ancillary use capped at 20%. So I think that it'd be worthwhile to look at some of the examples of the companies, the advanced manufacturing companies that you're trying to attract, and see if that is appropriate for the objectives set forth in the general plan.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Chair, we have another comment from
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Yeah, another comment from Mr. Matt Taylor.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Just making. Hi, everyone. Making sure everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Hello. Thank you so much. So, hello. My name is Matt Taylor. I am a executive vice president with CBRE. My office is located in San Jose. I'm a resident of the city of San Jose, but I do a significant amount of my work in the city of Milpitas. I was actually formerly an advisor to the Planning Commission for the city of Milpitas, and I've worked very closely with Alex Andrade and Daniel Daegu and a lot of the other wonderful people at the city in the planning departments and economic development departments. The reason I wanted to speak today was related to Goodman's comment, or Mr. Mace's comment on behalf of Goodman, about the revisions to the planning code, specifically in the Oak Creek area. My work sees me representing a significant number of advanced manufacturing companies, the companies that are in the news now and are the companies that the city of Milpitas would like to attract because of the jobs and the revenue that they bring to the city. And I have significant concern based upon the proposed limitation of warehouse uses in the general plan amendment for the Oak Creek area, that it would significantly hamper the ability to attract these companies. The groups that you are looking to bring into the city require flexibility in the code. And many of them, despite the fact that you would think that they would not be doing much warehousing in their project, need significant warehouse, whether it's in one building, in multiple buildings as part of a overall campus strategy, or as just part of their use as it relates to their overall footprint in the Silicon Valley. The other concern that I have is this piece of the code, or this proposed revision, would significantly deter developers from coming in and improving the city of Milpitas and the available properties that are there, specifically because of the lack of flexibility of uses. These developers are the ones who are going to take the older, outdated buildings and convert them and invest capital and attract these new advanced manufacturing uses. So appreciate you giving me the time tonight, and I am happy to discuss any of these items in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Liz, is there anyone else?
Yes, we have City Manager Ned Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry to join a little bit late, but I did want to listen to some of the conversation. I just wanted to respond to the two gentlemen who just spoke. The purpose of the zoning amendments in the business park R&D, the new business park R&D zone, is to bring them into consistency with our new general plan. And the entire purpose of creating that district, both the land use designation in the general plan and now the zoning, is to attract the very types of businesses that are being mentioned, namely advanced manufacturing. So if there is anything in there, we always want to hear from the industry. If there's something in there that they feel would be a deterrent to attracting those types of businesses to Milpitas, and we certainly want to hear that, and then to make the adjustments that are needed. But it's always been my understanding, and working with Alex and his team, that the BPRD, Business Park Research and Development, was meant to expand the types of uses and enhance the city's ability to attract these new types of employment uses to that area, as well as other areas of the city. So we can certainly take a look at it. And we have, as you can tell, we have a really great team of consultants, and Holly is our in-house zoning expert. So we can work on that together. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, Jen or Holly. So I just thought that I wanted to comment on that, because it was just surprising to me to hear that come out, because it's exactly opposite of what we were trying to achieve with that new district.
Hey, thank you, Ned. Any question or comments?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was also kind of impressed, and I don't know if I could direct it to Holly or Monica, that you would do a balancing of all of this, right? Everything has to be balanced. We're only on stage 2. And so I was thinking that we will make sure, with the size of Milpitas and the business sector being encouraged and bringing business here to our city, is that we will be able to balance out percentage-wise for the different sectors of, whether it's the BDR, what is that? The BPRD and the rest, mixed use, residential, and everything. Is that right? We're going to be balancing that off.
Yes, certainly that is the goal. So as you saw in the presentation, we took relatively limited guidance from the general plan about BPRD. It was 3 paragraphs or so summarizing the intent for that new zone, and we had to develop out of that a full set of use regulations and development standards. And I think it was a really successful kind of collaborative effort between the city staff, including economic development. We really got a lot of input from Alex, from Director Andrade and his staff, making sure that the use regulations were such that, you know, we were attracting the kind of businesses into the BPRD zone that the city wants, and not making the process too onerous, you know, and appropriately limiting certain uses, so that really this zone is very focused on advanced manufacturing, research and development, and these sort of high-tech uses that the city wants to attract. And then for the metro area zones, there was a little bit more specificity in the metro plan about uses and development standards. But again, really close collaboration with our consultants, and hopefully what we've put before you is a good draft and a starting point for conversation. But again, we hope to get as much input from the community, from the planning commissioners, economic development and trade commission, city council, as much input as we can, and then we will refine these regulations for adoption later this year or early next year.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of you, because this was a very good comprehensive, although we're only on the second stage, right? And so we will be able to go on and adjust this as we develop. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Any other questions for Holly? Thank you very much, Holly.
Chair, we have Mr. Matt Taylor would like to speak again.
Sure.
Sorry, everyone, making sure you could hear me. First off, I want to say I appreciate the hard work and the attention that Holly, her team, economic development have done to try to build something. And I think everyone understands the intent of the code, the way that it was written. But from experience working with these groups, and I'm happy to provide the city with examples, with contacts with advanced manufacturing companies, some of which are located in Milpitas, some of which are in neighboring cities, and other economic development groups as well in other municipalities that have either chosen to adopt a standard like this or not. And there's examples where when you restrict the uses that are available, not only does it hamper interest in the buildings, it also hampers developer interest. And so I just want to be clear, you know, I have close contact with a number of very large employers in the city of Milpitas who occupy space in this area, and the proposed limitation to warehouse use would restrict their ability to grow, to hire more employees, to continue to innovate in the city of Milpitas. And also, I think because of that, it has the unintended consequence of creating less interest from the developer front to build the buildings that are required to advance technology in the Silicon Valley. So again, I want to say that I'm happy to be a resource for this. I am happy to connect whoever is necessary with the users of these buildings, the developers of these buildings, and then other cities who have tried similar things, because I think we can all agree we don't want a lot of parcel trucks driving around Oak Creek. That's not the intent. The concern, though, is that by limiting the types of uses that we could put in these buildings, you're also limiting the amount of developer and tenant interest.
Okay, thank you very much. Liz, is there anybody else?
Yes, Alex Andrade would like to speak.
Thank you very much. Just want to respond to some of the public comments, and also just recognize that the market obviously has changed since we started having conversations about the business park research and development zoning. Internally, we started those conversations before the pandemic, and we were very pleased and excited from a staff perspective to see that there was new development happening in North San Jose, and that trend was heading eastbound on Highway 237. Before the pandemic, we thought that Milpitas would be next in that type of investment. in research and development and of course business park. But however, we didn't anticipate that a pandemic would take place. We're learning more about how people are using space now. Obviously, the market has changed. Businesses in some respect, in terms of office and research and development, they're reducing their footprint. So from an economic development perspective, and we have had conversations with planning and Ms. Pearson and the city manager's office, as well as the consultants, and we would explore some flexibility around the southwestern employment area as it relates to the business park research and development. Notwithstanding, in the innovation district around the transit center, where we have more residents and we have public transit, we would like to stay with our traditional idea of what a business park research and development zoning would look like, because we envision that area to be more robust and a dynamic business and job cluster. But going back to the southwestern employment area where Mr. Ward and Mr. Taylor were communicating on, just know that city staff will take a look at flexibility as we have our internal conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Liz, anybody else on?
No other community members in the queue.
Okay. Then can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Hey,
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
thank you. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Oh, we got to take a vote, right? Can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned.